What is up, YouTube? I'm back again. Let's just make sure we're recording, which we are. Perfect. And yes, we are continuing again on this masculinity and manhood journey with me just yapping off the dome while I play video games. And this one might be a little bit different because I'm going to give you the caveat up front. I am not married, so take everything I say with a grain of salt, but the information that I'm giving you is from a really good, biblically sound teacher, Voddie Baucham, who has recently passed away, but has made incredible sermons on marriage and relationships that I've shared with my friends who are married and have found it quite useful. And so I always think about this as just making sure that, again, I can control the controllables, and that I'm making sure that I am the man that is worthy and ready to shepherd and lead the woman of that will be in my life. So the topic for this video is going to be about biblical manhood and like the minimum requirement of biblical manhood, which is going to kind of dovetail into the topic of what a man needs to be like marriage material, right? So like I said, I'm gonna be pulling most of this information from a sermon that Voddie Baucham has given, so I'm gonna link that in the video below in the comment section, not comment section, the discussion, whatever you call it, description section below, and you can go back and watch it. He also has a version for what biblical femininity, what a biblical woman should look like and should be. So I think that they can be very useful, especially for those who are really, they believe that marriage is something that's super important, pivotal to their lives, something they're really aiming for. Any given day, I kind of feel like whether or not marriage is for or not for me. I'm gonna get the gun because I'm about to make this match a lot easier. So I think this right here is like really good because, again, I want to combat the idea that you have to be on any of the extreme ends, right? Whether or not you're a complete simp or whether or not you're a complete toxic jerk where you treat women like they're second-class citizens. And so neither are biblically correct. So the first thing that Voddie Baucham focuses on in his video, he calls it, a man must be willing to engage in God-honoring labor, meaning that one of the exact phrases he says is that God does not abide by a lazy man, and nor should you. So we always hear about in Proverbs that a person should not be slothful, a person should not be lazy, and all those different things in terms of wise sayings that you have to work to get what you want in life. And so that means, yes, you have to be willing to work hard, and do it in a God-honoring way. So it means no scheming, no scamming, nothing that's going to be dishonoring, nothing that's going to be corrupt, nothing that's going to be an issue where people are going to start questioning your integrity. So those are very, very, very important things. When we're talking about God-honoring labor, that is what he's talking about. And so those are things that's the first thing he talks about. So the homosexuals are probably going to take offense to that. Let's open this package. And the second thing that he talks about after that is that he must be a person who loves God's law. And so he talks about that as a very brief thing where he says you should want to indulge in the word, meditate in the word often, because you have to be the spiritual leader for that woman, right? So for husbands, they're asked to be provider, protectors, and priests. But he basically dumbs it down to the absolute basics. He asks a very simple question, which many of us, especially those who claim to be believers, should be something that we think about, right? He says, how many of you can actually name the 10 Commandments? He calls it the Decalogue. That's, again, it's another fancy way of saying the 10 Commandments. He's like, if you don't even know the basics, he's like, there's no way, he says, for him being a father, he would feel comfortable leaving his wife leaving not his wife, leaving his daughter in that man's care. So the bare minimum, especially for those who want to be Christians, we should at least know the very basics of our faith. And the very basics that we should learn, even though they've taken us out of the schools where in the past we used to have the 10 Commandments in classrooms or in courts, we should at least know the 10 Commandments, right? Those are the bare minimums. These are things that even people know that if you do these things, you go to jail, right? You steal, you go to jail. You kill, you go to jail. You commit adultery in some cases, especially if you're like in the army or something like that. You can lose your benefits. You can get an honorable discharge, dishonorable discharge, right? So there's a level of integrity that's associated with just the Decalogue, just the 10 Commandments. So those are things that we should be thinking about, right? So those are the first two things: be engaged in God-honoring labor, and also love God's law. And then let me see what I'm gonna do with this. So then the third thing he says is that you have to be willing to prioritize family. And this right here is where you get all the red pillars angry, because then they'll claim about how conservatism and politics and blah 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 are all biblically based, and I don't believe it, because they often do the very opposite and treat God's women, the women who love God, to like they're second-class citizens, which they're not. Even though they are helpmeets, they're not second-class citizens. And so what that means is that, like Christ, who prioritizes the church, where he gave up even against his own will, well, not against his own will, he submitted his will to the Father, where he went to the Garden of Gethsemane and prayed 3 times to have this cup pass. And he said, nevertheless, thy will be done. We're talking about the Father. So it means he went and faced something that was horrific, embarrassing, agonizing for the church, for his wife, for his bride. And so likewise, as men, we have to prioritize our family. Even though it's hard, there's sacrifices we'll have to make. And yes, people tell you that you need to follow your purpose, but realistically, if you're doing things in a biblical sense, your purpose is to serve and glorify God. So if you're doing those things, it's going to show that in the form of prioritizing your family, right? So now the boys take second seat, mom takes second seat, dad takes second seat. He said, for this reason, a man shall leave his parents and cleave to his wife as one flesh. So your family, the one that you're choosing to create, takes first priority. And I know it goes against all the things that people say, follow your purpose and all those different things. Your purpose is God honoring. And when we engage in marriage, especially, which is going to be the number one institution that God uses to show our interaction between the church and Christ, we have to behave in that manner that is glorifying to God. So I think those 3 things are really good. Voddie Baucham does a much better job of kind of teasing that out, pulling it out, and really explaining it, even for a babe in Christ to understand. But it still has principles that are grounded and will work even outside of the context of the church. So I think that's all I want to kind of go on. Check out his sermon that's linked in the description below. It's going to be about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, I believe, if I remember correctly. And I believe it's a really great read. If you go, not read, but listen, if you go through any of his sermons, it's always going to be eye-opening. Even his 4-part Love and Marriage series is also really good. I always learn something new, because I think for him, my favorite definition of love had come from him, from that 4-part Love and Marriage. So I think I want to call it a seminar, because it wasn't a sermon. It was like something he was teaching to the church. And he defined love as an act of the will accompanied by emotion that requires action on behalf of his object. And when he breaks that down is the fact that you choose who you love. He points out all the biblical texts in terms of that. You don't just fall in love. You can control who you love. You make an active choice, because it's hard for you to love a person that you don't spend time with, you don't try to get to know, you don't put energy into. You don't just magically fall in love. You can fall into lust. You can see someone and be super attracted to them, but it doesn't mean you love them. So love is an act of the will, but it doesn't mean that it's devoid of, it says accompanied by emotion. So it's not an emotion, it's not absent of emotion, but is accompanied by emotion. When you love a person, that means when they hurt, you hurt. When they're excited, you're excited. When they lie to you, it's going to cut a little bit deeper than a random stranger lying to you, right? Because you love that person. So that means emotions are going to come with it, right? But it's not going to be the thing. Your emotions come and go. You're happy sometimes and sad other times. Love is something to be stable because it's an act of the will. It's a choice. And then followed by that, it's going to be accompanied by action on behalf of his object. A person that you love, you're not going to intentionally try to hurt. A person that you love, you'll try to make sure you're telling them the truth. A person that you love, you're going to make sacrifices for. So he gives those three parts of what true biblical love is. I just love it because it gets over all that fluffiness where people are like, oh, love is this feeling. And they're talking about infatuation or excitement or butterflies. Those things are not love, especially not in a biblical sense. Right now we have so many different things that just kind of confuse us because of what we've seen in movies, TV, media, and society that kind of like just made things seem like it's so different, so foreign, where things are super simple. And so if you find true love where you actually decide this is your person, this is the person you're going to commit to, you can do that. And so I think if you go down that Voddie Baucham rabbit hole, you won't be disappointed. So check out the biblical masculinity video down there. I'll probably drop the on being a biblical woman down there as well. But I'll see you in the next video. Peace.